right, so good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in from around the world to another exciting broadcast with us here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For many of you, it's your very first time ever joining us, and if that is the case, then we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. We've done 33 programs already in September. This is just our second program in a crazy October. I think we've got 50 broadcasts coming this month, so it's going to be a wild ride as we get to showcase to you the coolest scientists, explorers, and places around planet Earth. Such a pleasure and privilege to get to do that. And as I like to say to everyone, everything we do is on our YouTube channel. So if you want to share this, watch this after the fact, you can absolutely do so right there. Now, earlier today, we got the chance to hang out with the Toucan Rescue Ranch, one of my very favorite groups we ever bring on the broadcast. And we are keeping the old treasure amazing best partners going today with Anna from VINS. The Vermont Institute for Natural Sciences rescues, rehabilitates, releases injured birds. They have educator ambassador birds that bring the world of raptors to the public, both live and virtually. I think we've done like 30 programs with VINS over the years. They do amazing work. You can check out their website below. As I said, everything's on our YouTube channel if you want to see some other birds that they have. But I'm going to not keep stealing the thunder of Anna. I'm going to turn it over to her to blow your minds with all the amazing stuff they do there and to get to meet some amazing wild birds. So Anna, thank you so much for joining us again. Welcome back.
It is so good to be back.
We've got like a bazillion kids. We got kids from, I think, like 5 states, 3 provinces or something like that. It's like a crazy all of North America encompassed today. So I can't wait to get them.
I love that. Oh, I love that so much. Well, hello, everyone. And thank you, Jesse, for the introduction. My name is Anna. I'm the director of on-site and outreach programs here at the Vermont Institute of Natural Science. And our whole mission as a nature center is we want to motivate people to care about the environment. And we do so in a whole variety of different ways, one of which is education, like you guys are with us here today. We do programs on site at our nature center. We do outreaches. We travel around Vermont, where we're located, and New Hampshire next door. We also do virtual programs like this. We host summer camps and field trips and all things like that, with the idea that we believe the more you know about the wildlife around you, the better prepared we are to take care of it. As such, we also have a research department that helps us to learn more about the animals around us. We partner with scientists from all different universities around us, like Cornell University and Dartmouth College and University of Vermont, studying our local species like snapping turtles, dragonflies, flying squirrels, and broadwing hawks. But we also do have that wildlife rehabilitation center where we take in injured and orphaned birds from the wild around us and help them get back on their feet, back on their wings, and back out into the wild again. We take on average about 1,000 bird patients a year through our hospital. And the goal is always to release them back into the wild. That's where they came from. That's where they're going to be happiest and healthiest and playing their role in the environment. But unfortunately, it's not always possible. Sometimes the birds that come to us, they have some very serious injuries and they might not be able to return to the wild. So in those cases, we see if those birds would be willing to be trained to be education ambassadors and sit on a gloved hand or fly between 2 trainers and help us to teach people about their wild living species and promote that care. So today, I have with me, sort of behind the scenes over here, 3 of our education ambassadors to introduce to you. And I'm going to bring them out one by one, tell you a little bit about them, their individual story, as well as their species, and go all the way down the line. I think what will work best is if we hold all of our questions to the end. If you've got a question about a specific bird, we'll just tackle that all at the end. And in the meanwhile, we'll go through the wonderful world of birds of prey, or raptors. Now, I want you guys to be thinking about that word raptor when I duck off stage for a moment to grab our first ambassador bird. What do you picture when you picture that word raptor? I'll be right back.
I was watching Jurassic Park like last week, so my mind goes to like a very scary 6-foot biped that can open doors. But I don't think we're covering that today. Although we did discuss in our 2 dinosaur programs this year that birds are in fact dinosaurs. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think we're going to get something a little bit different with Anna. Anna is not going to be eaten in today's live broadcast. I'm so excited. Oh, our owl, my favorite, Anna.
Yes, much as it pains me, we do not have a velociraptor to introduce to you. We have instead, this right here is Heartland, and Heartland is a barred owl. I'm sure you could probably tell that just from looking at him. He's got those characteristic, very large forward-facing eyes. He's got a sharp hooked beak on the end of his face. And he's also, although they're somewhat hidden in his belly feathers, he has sharp talons on the ends of his feet. Those are the kind of three important characteristics of a raptor, of a living bird that hunts other animals for its food and does so specifically with their taloned feet. If our barred owl here got hungry sitting in his forested habitat up here in New England, he might use those very, very large eyes to look around on the forest floor for a mouse, maybe a salamander, maybe even a snake. These owls also eat a lot of aquatic invertebrates, so bugs that live in streams like crayfish, if you can believe it. They're very into pretty much anything that scurries, crawls, or flies in front of them. And I'm plying Heartland with some treats right now. He's getting little bits of chicken for sitting so nicely here and meeting you all. So he's going to use those large eyes, but of course, you're probably thinking about, this is an owl. This is a nocturnal hunter. This is a bird that's looking for its prey in the forest at night. And so the very fact that those eyes are large is why he can see so well in the dark. Picture your eyes like a big picture window. The bigger the window that you have, the more light can come into the room. The bigger the eyeball you have, the more light can come in and get processed by the owl's brain. So they've got that huge eye size, but they also have something else going on in there. I don't know if any of you have cats at home, but you might have glanced at your cat in the evening, sort of sidelong through the shadows, and seen that their eyes sort of glow with this green gold light behind them, sort of eerie. And owls have this too. This is an organ in the back of the eye called the tapetum lucidum. And what this does is basically like a mirror. When light is coming into the owl's eye or your cat's eye, it goes through the eyeball to the retina, a film in the back of the eye that picks up the light and processes it. Now for us, that's the end of the story. The light goes into the back of your eye, and if your retina doesn't catch it, it's gone and you don't see that stuff. But if you have a mirror behind your retina, like an owl or a cat does, that light gets reflected back across that membrane and you have a second chance to pick it up. So they can see in much, much lower light conditions with that tapetum lucidum than we can. But that's not really the whole story for a barred owl. This particular species of owl also has very, very good hearing. And he can hear the sounds of a mouse stepping on a twig from about 75 feet away. But more importantly, here in Vermont, we get a lot of snow in the wintertime. And for a barred owl, they're not migratory. They don't go anywhere in the winter. They stay right here with us. They still need to be able to hunt in the forest throughout the winter. And they can't exactly see through the snow. But what they can do is listen for the sounds of the mice in their tunnels under the snow in what we call the subnivean zone. And they're using their tremendously large ears. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, Anna, this owl doesn't have any ears. I don't see its ears at all. You're correct. You don't see its ears. But Heartland does, in fact, have ears. They are on either side of his head, just behind the eye, and just in front of this dark line of feathers that you can see going around his face. These two dark circles around his eyes, those are his facial discs. And they're composed of feathers that are actually pretty stiff. They're able to hold up the sound waves that are coming at him all the time, the same way that the cartilage in your ear holds up those sound waves and funnels them down into your ear canal so you can hear the sounds. His feathers do that job for him, so he can hear the sounds of the mice under 6 or 8 inches of snow and be able to accurately assess where that noise is coming from. Now, barred owls are one of the species of owls that have ear asymmetry. So actually, one of his ear openings is higher up on his head than the other one. Ours are perfectly level, so we're used to that. Symmetry is nice. But for an owl, he would have one ear up here and one ear down here. And that helps him to better pinpoint the location of that mouse. Not only did it come from his right rather than his left, but slightly forward rather than slightly behind of where he was pointing those discs. Now, Heartland here, he came to live at Vin's back in 2016, and he was just a very young bird at the time. I think he was an older nestling that had fallen out of his nest. And unfortunately, in that fall, he wasn't unable to get care from his parents. So a group of people who happened to be walking by, they saw him, they scooped him up, and they brought him home. And they wanted to make sure that he got the best care possible, but they didn't really know how to get that to him. So they cared for him themselves for about a week before they brought him to our hospital. And in that time, Heartland sort of decided that, these humans, they're weird, but they're taking care of me. They're giving me food. I must be a baby human. This is something called imprinting. When a baby animal learns that it's the wrong species because it's being cared for by something other than its parents. Heartland is fully socialized to humans. He doesn't know that he's a barred owl, really, and he looks to humans for food, for protection, and even during the breeding season, he looks to humans for that sort of comfort, which is not something that we can give him. So we're very glad that Heartland ended up on our team because he makes an excellent education ambassador. He's very calm in front of audiences of people and helps us teach about barred owls. But we do wish that he had the opportunity to grow up with his barred owl parents, or at least with some foster siblings in rehab care, to not have been so heavily socialized with people. We try really hard to prevent that when we're raising baby birds in the hospital, so that we don't have situations like Heartland so often. Now, he's done a really great job sitting here and looking at the camera for you guys. So I'm going to sneak him back in his crate and we'll meet the next bird.
Amazing. Thanks, Anna. We're going to say a quick farewell to Heartland. I will note, if you want to check out more on Heartland or all the other animal ambassadors, including the two others we're going to meet, VinsWeb has an amazing ambassadors page on their website. I'll make sure all our classes have that at the end so they can check out more on their favorite birds that we're going to learn about today. So excited for what we're going to meet next. I've got to say, I love all raptors, but owls are by far my favorite. I've only seen one owl in my whole life live in the wild. If you have been lucky enough to see an owl in the wild, consider yourself very, very fortunate, because they are an amazing group of birds. Life of Birds, too, is a BBC series that has some of the best footage on this ever. I really encourage our classes to check that out as well. I'm going to turn it back to Anna. I think she's coming back in a sec. But let's do it and meet our second ambassador. Cool.
Excellent. Wonderful. So this bird that we're meeting now, this might be something more like what you were picturing if you were picturing a dinosaur in when we were picturing raptors. This is Northfield, and he is a broad-winged hawk. Now, a broad-winged hawk is a species of hawk, much like a red-tailed hawk that you might be more familiar with. Up here in New England, these guys are quite a bit more numerous than red-tailed hawks, actually. But you might not see them all that much because this is a forest-dwelling hawk. And they spend a lot of their time in the canopy of our leafed-out broadleaf trees. And they spend their time there in the summer when all of those trees are in leaf. So imagine this guy sitting 100 feet up in a tree with all the green leaves and the sunlight. You might not be able to spot him. He's actually got some pretty good camouflage going on with his brown and white feathers on his belly. Now, of course, he's called a broad-winged hawk, so you'd expect him to have broad wings, and you would be right. He has very wide, flat wings, and those wings are extra good for soaring. This bird is able to fly with a lot of energy efficiency, essentially. He just opens up those wings and allows the wind to carry him where he needs to go. Now, this could be in the form of a thermal, a rising column of hot air that comes off the land as the sun heats it during the day. He can use that thermal like an elevator, kind of get in at the bottom and circle around until it pushes him all the way up into the sky. If you have ever seen a group of circling hawks or maybe even vultures and been worried about your own mortality while you see the vultures circling high overhead, don't worry about it. They're just using a thermal to get high up in the sky without having to flap their wings. He will also use things like mountain updrafts. At least here in the eastern part of the United States, we have the Appalachian Mountain Range, which runs north to south, and our prevailing winds flow from west to east. So at a certain point, that wind has to go up and over the mountains. And in that point where it's going up, that updraft also helps to lift these soaring birds high into the sky. So a whole flock of broadwing hawks, when they're making their southward migration in the wintertime, will follow the line of the Appalachian Mountain Range because they're following all of that really, really excellent wind. Now, these particular birds migrate because mostly of food. We think about a lot of the time when birds are migrating, they're trying to get away from the cold winter temperatures, because that's why humans migrate, right? Some of us up here in Vermont go to Florida for the winter because it's really, really cold up here. But that's actually not as much of a problem for these birds. The problem is his food doesn't stick around in the wintertime. Broadwing hawks, sort of like barred owls, are very general with what they want to eat. They're going to catch mice, of course, but they also eat a lot of snakes and they eat a lot of insects. There aren't too many snakes to be had in Vermont in January and February, so he has to go to somewhere like Costa Rica or Panama to spend the winter, where there's a lot more food available to him. And given that broadwing hawks are, as I mentioned, one of the more numerous species of hawks here in New England, there's about 1.2 million of them, and they all go south for the winter, you can actually witness these magnificent migrations at certain points along their journey. Hawk Mountain Sanctuary in Pennsylvania is one such place that since 1932, scientists have been monitoring the population of birds of prey that migrate over that area of the ridge. And they count roughly 15 to 20,000 broadwing hawks that migrate right over their ridge every single year. If you go a little bit farther south, let's say you go to Corpus Christi in Texas, which is right on the Gulf of Mexico, those count sites, those scientists there will count several 100,000 broadwing hawks that migrate overhead. And if you go into Central America, let's say you go to Quecolde in Costa Rica, where the scientists there will count 1 million broadwing hawks as they migrate over. Now you'll notice these birds are following the land contours between North and South America. They're not just going right across the ocean, right across the Gulf of Mexico. And it all has to do with wind. Because they're so dependent on those mountain updrafts and those prevailing winds, they don't want to fly over the water because the wind is unpredictable there. They could get pushed out to sea. They could crash land into the ocean or a piece of land that they weren't expecting. And they also don't fly for the whole 3 weeks of their migration. They have to stop and get a snack and rest for the night and get up in the morning and get another snack and then get on their way. So they follow this land bridge, which is what allows us to study their populations. And it's a really, really important thing for scientists to know how well our raptor populations are doing, mostly because they are a good sentinel for the rest of the ecosystem. If a broadwing hawk population is doing well in a certain state, that probably means that so are all of the populations of the things that they eat. And if the things that they eat are doing well, it probably means that their habitat, the forest where they live, is also doing really, really well. So they stand for a bunch of other species. And when scientists know that hawks and falcons and owls and all the raptors are doing great, we can assume that much of the rest of the habitat is doing just as well. So Northfield here, his story, he has kind of a more conventional story. He came into our rehab clinic as a baby as well, but he had fallen out of his nest and broken his shoulder. Unfortunately, that's a really difficult injury to heal fully on a bird. Their shoulder is a pretty complicated joint. It's not like ours. It's not a ball and socket. And so unfortunately, Northfield was rendered flightless before he could even really fly himself. So he became part of our education ambassador team. Again, back in 2016, he and Heartland are actually the same age, I now realize, but he's been doing great ever since. I will mention that right now, like early October, we're just at the tail end of the broadwing hawk migration season. So he's feeling really restless. He still feels in his broadwing hawk bones, all of those hormones are circulating, telling him he should probably be thinking about heading south really soon. So he's really high energy, and that's why he's like spinning around on my glove. All right, well, I'm going to let him cool off for a little in his crate, and I'll bring out our last bird.
Amazing. While you're doing that, I'll bring up again the actual full page, the ambassadors page at Vin's Web, where I learned just seconds ago that in contrast to their very thoughtful, really cool names for some of their birds, they do have a turtle named Turt, which is the greatest name of all time. So a big thank you to the Vin's team. Whoever came up with Turt makes my absolute day. Again, all sorts of cool information on vinsweb.org. And I'm excited. This is the first time in a while we've met 3 birds in one of our broadcasts with Vince. Anna's like, we lined them up today beautifully for you to kick off October with a bang. So I'm so excited for who our third friend will be. Again, this will be on our YouTube channel. If you want to meet more of their birds, you can head there. But I'm turning it back to Anna, but she's back with number 3.
Yay! And we can absolutely meet Turt next time, Jesse.
I think we should.
I think we should. So this is our last bird who we're going to meet. This is Hawaii. And if you've sort of followed along, you know, Heartland was from Heartland, Vermont. Northfield is from Northfield, Vermont. Hawaii is from the island of Hawaii. And he is a peregrine falcon. Now, peregrine falcons are a pretty cool species of bird for a lot of reasons. These guys are one of the greatest conservation success stories that we've ever seen here in North America. Back in the 1970s, about 50 years ago, the peregrine falcon was nearly extinct in the eastern part of the United States due to a pesticide chemical called DDT. Fortunately, humans recognized the effect that this was having on the peregrine falcon populations, and they banned that chemical here so that the peregrines could recover, and they have. Peregrine falcons are no longer on the endangered species list in any state, and we have about 60 or so nesting pairs of peregrines right here in the state of Vermont. Another reason why they're so famous is because they're globally distributed. This is a bird that you can see on all 6 continents, excluding Antarctica. It's always excluding Antarctica. But they actually do show up on some sub-Antarctic islands, like the Falkland Islands. You can see peregrines all the way down there at the bottom of the world. But if you go to China, if you go to France, if you go to Mexico, if you go to Chile, you will see peregrine falcons of this kind. But the last reason why they are so well known is because they are superlative flyers. This is the fastest animal on the planet. Don't let anybody tell you it's the cheetah. It's the peregrine falcon. These birds do a particular style of hunting when they're hunting their prey called a stoop, where they dive straight down out of the air through a cloud of smaller birds like starlings or doves or pigeons, even a flock of ducks. A peregrine falcon will dive straight through that cloud, grabbing at those birds with their talons as they go by, or sometimes, because they're going so fast, balling up their toes into a little fist and literally falcon punching the bird out of the sky. And when they're traveling in this stoop, scientists have measured their speeds at more than 242 miles per hour. Now, to put that in perspective, 242 miles per hour is faster than most cars are capable of going. Like, no matter how hard I push the gas pedal on my little Subaru, it's not going to go 240 miles per hour. There are so few vehicles that can achieve that on land. And peregrine falcons do it just with their body. They drop down through the sky, pumping their wings to overcome their own terminal velocity, creating little vortices of wind underneath their wings like a jet engine's exhaust. They also have a lot of adaptations in their face to help them to survive traveling at this speed. He's got very viscous tears. The liquid that covers his eyes is more like jelly than it is like water, so that his eyes don't dry out while he's falling through the air. He also has a little bone in his nose, which is called a nasal tubercle. And what it does is it helps to slow down the air that's going down his nostrils so that he can actually breathe it. I mean, if you've ever stuck your head out of a vehicle while it's moving down the highway, you know how hard it is to breathe air that's coming at you a little too fast. He's got essentially the nose cone on a jet engine to allow him to breathe the air that's coming at him while he is diving. And so when they hit their prey, either with that open taloned hand or that closed fist at 200 miles per hour, then it is a ready-made meal for them to follow to the ground, to pick up and carry somewhere, to pluck the feathers off and eat it. Now, Hawaii here, he's a very high energy guy himself, and he came to us, as I mentioned, from the island of Hawaii. And he is one of the few peregrine falcons that were ever seen on the island of Hawaii, Because once again, a lot of birds of prey don't travel across water. It's just too unpredictable. We think that what maybe happened to Hawaii was that he was migrating south from somewhere in Alaska. He got blown out to sea on a storm. He might have hitched a ride on a tanker ship that was going across the Pacific to Hawaii. And by the time he arrived on the island of Oahu, we joke that he was so excited for his Hawaiian vacation that he flew face first into a brick wall. That was where he was found on the ground by a power line worker in Nanakuli, scooped up this poor little peregrine falcon whose beak had broken off at the tip. They brought him to the Honolulu Zoo, where he was cared for by veterinarians. They actually made him a 3D printed prosthetic beak to replace the part that had broken. But that was always meant to be a temporary measure. They wanted to see that he could grow back the tip of that beak. And unfortunately, it never did. The bone core within his beak is damaged, so he cannot grow a beak that is very long at all. In fact, he has kind of a massive underbite, which means he's not really capable of tearing up his own food into bite-sized pieces. He's voracious, but you can see that I'm plying him with little tidbits as we go along that I've pre-cut for him. There's no one there to cut up your food with a fork and knife when you're in the wild. So Hawaii was placed with us back in 2017, but he is now 15 years old. He was at another nature center for a little while, but we're very glad to have him join us here after his long journey here in Vermont. He's done such a good job, and he's so manic about food. I'm just going to sneak him off stage, but then I will be back to answer some questions.
Amazing. All right. We'll say a farewell to Hawaii. Again, our most energetic bird of all time. Peregrine falcons are my favorite bird of prey in the world. As we highlighted, the fastest animal on planet Earth. So a very, very cool creature to have the chance to see. If you guys have any questions about any of our 3 animal ambassadors today, anything else that the amazing team at VINS does to help care for birds and more, get those questions ready. I'm going to head to Ms. Green's class first to kick us off. I'll head to our K1s after that. Anna is back. Miss Green, come on in and take us away with the first question.
You wanted to know, you told me you wanted to know about why does he have the things on his feet? Go ahead and ask.
Why does he have stuff on his feet?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So all of the birds, actually, they're wearing a little bit of equipment that helps to keep them safe with us. They're wearing 2 leather anklets around their legs. And out of those anklets are 2 other pieces of leather called jesses. And those are both right now attached to a leash. When they're back in their enclosure, they don't have that leash on. Their legs are free to move wherever they need them to. But it's like when you take your dog for a walk on a leash, you don't want them to get spooked and run away somewhere that would be dangerous. It's the same with our birds. Doesn't go around the neck though, because the strongest part of a raptor are their legs.
Interesting. Great question, guys. All right, Miss Better's grade 6 is joining us in Toronto. If you guys have a question, come on in. You're good to go.
How did Hawaii get from Hawaii all the way to Vermont?
Yes. I know, right? It's a long story. So after he had healed from the injury that as much as he was going to heal in Hawaii, he was placed at a nature center in Northern California, actually, in Roseville. So he took an airplane flight to Roseville. He lived there for about 9 years. And then that facility was kind of downsizing. They had to close down. They wanted to place their animals somewhere else. And we had a little peregrine falcon shaped hole on our education team. So we agreed to take him from them. He took a Delta Airlines flight to Boston Logan Airport via animal cargo. And I picked him up and drove him here.
I love that you know the airport and the brand of plane. It's very exciting. Thank you for that. This is Delta, flying bird since 1947.
They're good. Their animal cargo is good. It's good.
Miss S's class joining us in Greenville, North Carolina. Welcome in, guys, and take us away if you have a question. Hey.
How does the bones move? Because everything's connected. Because I'm wondering how does the beak move, but the legs don't move at the same time?
How are they moving their head around when their legs are on your arm?
Oh, interesting. Is that the question? Like how? I mean, it's sort of like how you and I move, right? They have muscle control. They have these individual muscles and tendons that are controlling different parts of their body. You might have noticed that he's really good at keeping his head locked in space while his body is moving underneath him. And that's an ability that a lot of birds have, so they don't get seasick when they're sitting in a tree that's being blown about by the wind. Especially these birds that are so dependent on their vision for hunting. They're focused in on that squirrel on the ground while this branch that they're sitting on is moving in the wind. They want to be able to stay focused, so they have this kind of gyroscopic ability to keep their head in place. Does that kind of answer your question?
I think that's really good, Anna. And I mean, we featured some broadcasts before. I didn't really see it in today's birds, but we've had it where you've been sort of bobbing around and the head just stays perfectly still, which is really cool. I encourage our kids to check that out on YouTube. Let's head to general career. If you guys want to come on, Ms. Ayers' class, you're good to go.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, first of all, Anna and Vince and Jesse and Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, a big thank you for all you're doing to help nature. It's amazing. And this is my team here at General Career. We actually brainstormed a bunch of questions. You covered a bunch of them, but it's hard to pick because they're all so good. But I'm going to say, can we ask if you name all the birds that come into your rescue? And what is the most difficult or aggressive one you've had?
Ooh.
Good questions. Okay. The answer to, do we name all of the birds that come into the rescue? We don't name the birds that come into the hospital. They actually get a patient number. And that's because we don't want to get super duper attached to them because they're only here for a little bit, ideally, right? They're going to go right back into the wild as soon as they're healed. So they just get a patient number so we can keep track of them while they're here. If it's a bird that's going to be living with us permanently for the rest of its life, then we give it a name. And our particular convention here at VINS is we name the bird after where they came from in the wild, the town or the state, to remind us that they are indeed wild animals. Turtle, she's actually 47 years old, and so she predates the naming convention.
Amazing. There's a perfect answer. I was going to ask about that next. Miss Forsyth's class, grade 9, sometimes have questions, sometimes don't. So just let me know in the chat if you do, and I'll come to you live. But we will go back for another round with all our live classes as we whip through those like I promised we would. Oh, you're at the camera. Miss Forsyth, I'm coming to you first, and then we'll go to Miss Green again. Hey.
Hi. We want to know how old the first two education ambassadors are and the life expectancy of all three.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So Heartland there, the barred owl, he is 7. And barred owls can live into their late 20s or early 30s. The Broadwing hawk, Northfield, is also 7. He and Heartland came in the same summer. And probably late teens, early 20s, maybe mid-20s at the outside would be a lifespan for a Broadwing hawk. And then Hawaii, the peregrine falcon, he is 15. And I took him to the vet a few months ago just for a checkup. And the vet was like, oh, so he's kind of old. And I was like, no, he's not. So late teens is a good lifespan for a peregrine.
Yeah. I want to stress this because I think I remember being a kid and hearing about life expectancies of various animals. And I think we all naturally sort of link to people. People are really long lived. Like we are one of the oldest animals on earth, like whales. There's some parrots, there's some tortoises that live as long as we do, but we're really unusual. Most things, especially smaller animals, are in that 10 to 20 range. So I'm really glad we got that question. Thanks, Miss Forsyth's class. Miss Green, coming back to you, and then we're going to Miss Better's class. Come on in, guys, and take us away.
Hi, I have a question. What eats your barred owl?
What eats the barred owl? Believe it or not, other owls. It's an owl eat owl world out there. And great horned owls, one of the larger species of owls in North America, they are notorious for eating other smaller owl species. So great horned owls will absolutely eat even an adult barred owl. But beyond that, not too many things. The babies in the nest, when they're really young and just downy and can't defend themselves or fly away, they're vulnerable to any sort of nest predator, like a weasel or a raccoon that could get down inside the cavity.
Yeah. We always do one bird at a time now, Anna, but one of our very first broadcasts, I remember this so distinctly. You had multiple educators, someone with you. Someone had a great horned owl, and I think you had an eastern screech owl, and the whole broadcast was the screech owl being like, I don't know. And the horned owl being like, oh, I'm done with this chicken. So, yeah, it's weird to think of creatures eating their own, but it's actually really common in the animal kingdom. So, yeah, great question. Miss Better's class, welcome back in, and take us away.
I have 2 questions. One of them is, why do you call them raptors? And the other one is, how do you figure out where they're from and like how old they are?
Nice. Oh, yeah. So why are they called raptors? That word raptor comes from a Latin root, doesn't everything. And the Latin root is rapere, which means to seize or to grab. That word describes really well what raptors do. They grab onto their prey. And so I think that word is used to describe the dinosaurs that did that. And now today, also the birds that do that. My fun fact about the word raptor is it first came into use about 200, 250 years ago in the English language, but it didn't mean birds back then. It meant literally a thief. Someone was a raptor if they like grabbed your money. It's come to refer to birds today, but that's kind of how it got started. As for how do we know where the birds are from and how old they are, we don't always know how old they are. And we know where they're from because generally the person that finds an injured bird in the wild, they bring us the bird and then we ask them questions. Okay, where were you when you found it? What was going on? So that we can learn better how to take care of this bird. We don't always know how old they are because if they come in to us as an adult, we can only say that they are as old as now or yesterday when they came in. We can't really age them accurately once they're fully grown.
Great questions, guys. I want to note, if someone stole like my handbag or something, just the thought of being like, Raptor, like yelling out in the street is very fun in my mind. Miss S's class, we're going to head back to you guys. Come on back in and take us away.
Hi, I got a question. What is the third bird? What does it like to eat?
What does the peregrine falcon like to eat, Anna?
Oh, yeah. They are actually... Yes. Peregrine falcons are kind of bird specialists. So they won't eat other peregrine falcons in general, but they eat other birds like pigeons, quail, doves, ducks. Peregrines are actually, they have so many adaptations that make them really efficient hunters. They will go after something that is their size, like a fully grown adult mallard duck. Probably weighs more than Hawaii does, but if Hawaii had all of his faculties about him, I'm sure he would go for it.
Yeah. We've got a lot of Toronto classes today, and so I just want to note, like, we have quite a few of them in the Toronto area, which is very cool because our tall buildings downtown serve as sort of like natural canyons for them to hunt pigeons in, which is one of the most metal uses of big buildings in the world. Yeah. Taking that from the peregrine's perspective, just diving down and hitting things near the ground surface. So for our Toronto classes, very cool, and you can think of it that way. Great question, Miss S. General Curro, we're heading to you, and Miss Forsyth will wrap up after that if you have a second one. Classes, this has been great. Time flies and you're having fun.
Yeah.
Come on back in, guys.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to say from our list of great questions, what has been the worst injury you've ever treated at your center?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me what was the worst injury I ever got from a bird. I'm not going to answer that question because it's boring. I've not been seriously injured by any of the birds that I've worked with. The worst injury that we've ever gotten in the rehab clinic, I mean, there's a lot. You see a lot, and you see a lot of things that are like, yeah, I could go the rest of my life without ever seeing that again. I would say the one that hit me the most was a bird that got transferred to us from another nature center who they weren't capable of treating it there, but they'd had it for a while. And so it had actually healed, but it had 2 fractured femurs. So 2 fractured legs that were fully healed, but like not straight, just right angles like that. So that was really sad. And unfortunately, we had to euthanize that bird.
Yeah. So this is the thing with animal hospitals, and we talked about this in a bit with the Toucan Rescue Ranch earlier, but these are places that bring in animals in really dire straits at times. And again, it's a testament to the amazing teams that work in these places that they can care for so many animals. You said over 1,000 birds, which is wild coming in annually. And I mean, not every animal is savable. It's a fact about the work that happens in these places. But again, lots of great stuff to help make sure that many animals that wouldn't have survived otherwise get that chance. So I'm really glad we got that question, guys. Miss Forsyth, you have to go in like 1 minute. So I'm going to come to you really quick, and then we'll wrap up with a big thank you with everyone. Hey.
Thanks very much. And Anna, you're an amazing presenter. We learned a lot. We want to know the oldest animal you have currently.
Ooh, it's so Technically, it's Turt. I've got one of my coworkers sitting here. Technically, it's Turt. Our ambassador wood turtle is 47 years old, but our oldest bird ambassador is Ogden, the turkey vulture, who is 42 years old. Yeah.
I discovered when I moved to Newfoundland that turkey vultures are not near, like it's really weird to see them here, which is so freaky for me because if you're in Ontario, our Bracebridge class, you guys see turkey vultures all the time. I love going up there just for them. But they're such a special bird and they're so unique. And I really encourage our classes to check out turkey vultures when they're done too. They're a little maligned, but they're wonderful and they're an amazing animal. Anna, is there any final message you want to share with us before we bring in all our classes to say a big thank you and farewell? Again, vinsweb.org, animal ambassadors. If any of our kids want to adopt the animals there, they can do that. I'll make sure they all have those links in a minute. But what can we wrap up with to learn about these amazing creatures?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jesse. Well, I wanted to thank you guys for being here. You've already done something big today, which is just listening to me talk about these cool birds. You can do something else really big to help these birds by remembering a fun fact that you learned and sharing it with someone else, not someone who is also here. That's cheating. Sharing it with your family when you get home. And that way kind of spreading the idea that these birds are cool, these birds are important, and we should think about how we as humans can be helpful for them.
Amazing. Can't think of a better message than that. Head to the YouTube channel if you want to share this program with your friends and family. It's right there. I'll make sure all our teachers have the link. And go look for raptors yourselves. All of you live in areas where there are birds of prey. And I spend most of my days now just wandering around, like hoping I'll find a bird of prey. I have a really easy job. So I encourage you to check that out when you're done. But we're going to bring in all our classes, as always, to say a big thank you and farewell. Ms. Green, Better's class, Ms.
Thank
S,
you.
Better's class, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Farewell, guys. See you guys soon.